Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. We've got kind of a wild mix of stuff for you today.
Yeah, kind of all over the place.
We've got gaming news, a little peek into sauna culture in the UK, traditional pancake races, and then some concerns about duck populations. And we'll even do a little fact check on some recent political claims.
Yeah, by the end of this, you'll definitely have some fun facts for your next dinner party.
For sure. Okay, so let's jump right into it, I guess, with gaming.
Okay, sounds good.
So there was this interview with the Blizzard Entertainment president, Johanna Ferries, and it really got me thinking about how gaming is not just for, quote-unquote gamers anymore. It's going mainstream.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting is how she was talking about how gaming is adapting to fit into people's lives more, right? Like no matter how much time they have or what platforms they prefer.
Right.
So it's not just that stereotype of, the hardcore gamer sitting in their basement,
Exactly.
It's becoming much more personalized and accessible to everyone. Yeah, she has this great quote where she says, "The medium is starting to meet people on their terms."
Yeah, I love that.
I think that really captures this shift.
Yeah, exactly. And think about it, we're seeing gaming now blend this cutting-edge technology with storytelling, like really captivating storytelling.
Right.
It's not just about playing anymore. It's about like immersing yourself in these really rich experiences.
Yeah, and speaking of gaming culture, I mean, you can't forget about the whole world that's sprung up around it. Like with esports and streaming and cosplay, it's really become like a whole world of its own.
It really has.
And get this, BlizzCon is coming back
Oh, wow.
in September 2026 for its 15th anniversary.
That's awesome.
Yeah, back to its roots at the Anaheim Convention Center. I mean, can you imagine the energy there?
Well, I bet it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like it speaks to something we were talking about before, like this human need for connection.
Pose
It's not just a convention. It's like a gathering place for this huge community of people who share these passions.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that reminds me of our next topic about the rise of community saunas in the UK,
Oh, yeah.
where it's becoming less about the sweating and more about these social experiences.
I was so surprised to learn about this.
Really?
Yeah, like there's this place in London, the Hackney Wick Community Sauna Baths, and they started in 2022 with just these 2 small saunas.
Yeah.
One of them was even in a horse box.
That's so cool, in a horse box.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that they've kind of evolved the traditional sauna into something much more experiential.
Yeah, how so?
Well, they've got like sauna club nights, poetry workshops, even something called Office rituals.
Office rituals. I've never heard of that. What is that?
It's German for infusion. They pour water infused with essential oils onto hot stones, and it creates this burst of scented steam.
Oh, wow. That sounds amazing.
Right. It's all about like enhancing the sensory experience.
Interesting. So they've really elevated it.
Yeah, they have. And one of the articles we read actually said the most popular saunas are those that emphasize community and connectedness.
So it's not just about, the physical benefits of the sauna. It's about being with other people.
It seems like people are craving these real-life interactions more and more, like something beyond the digital world.
Yeah. I wonder if in a time when we're constantly plugged in, we're seeking out these tangible offline connections even more.
That's a good point. Maybe these community saunas are filling that void.
Maybe so.
Okay, so let's shift gears completely now to something totally different. A UK tradition that combines physical activity with, a bit of religious history. Shrove Tuesday pancake races.
These races are so cool. They're a great example of how these cultural traditions can evolve, but still keep their original symbolism intact. It's history in action.
I love it. So for those who haven't heard of this, these races happen on Shrove Tuesday, the day before Lent starts.
Right.
And it's all about having some fun, indulging a little before the 40 days of fasting and reflection that lead up to Easter.
Gotcha.
We've got this article on the Guildhall race in London, which sounds as quite a spectacle.
It is. It's pretty wild. They've got runners racing while flipping pancakes. Can you imagine?
I can't even flip a pancake standing still.
Yeah. And of course, being the UK, there are elaborate costumes involved.
Of course.
But what stood out to me was the involvement of these different livery companies.
Livery companies, I'm not familiar with that. What are those?
They're these ancient guilds that go back centuries. They originally represented different trades like the bakers or the candlestick makers.
Oh, wow.
But they still play a role in the city's civic life even today. And in this race, you've got the gun makers who start the race, the clock makers who time it, and the fruiterers who provide the lemons for the pancakes.
That's amazing.
It's just this really quirky mix of history and celebration.
I love those little details that bring it all to life.
Me too.
And, Shrove Tuesday is also known as Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday.
Right.
And it's a time for seeking forgiveness and starting fresh before Lent. So these races aren't just about pancakes,
Yep.
They're about reflecting on this deeper spiritual level.
Exactly. Even in these lighthearted events, there can be these layers of cultural and historical meaning.
For sure. Okay, so speaking of meaning, let's turn to something a bit more serious, a concerning decline in duck populations here in the U.S.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
A new report found that at least 112 North American bird species, including ducks, have lost over half their populations in the last 50 years.
Wow.
Ducks used to be this big conservation success story, and now they're struggling.
That's really sad to hear. And what's even more alarming is that dabbling and diving ducks have decreased by around 30% since 2017 alone.
Yeah, and overall waterfowl numbers are down 20% since 2014. Those are huge drops.
Yeah, it really points to something being seriously wrong. And the report says that habitat loss and this prolonged drought are major factors, particularly the loss of grasslands and the drought in the prairie pothole region of the Great Plains, which is a vital breeding ground for many ducks.
Right. It just highlights how interconnected all these environmental issues are and how they can affect wildlife.
Yeah, it's not just about, bird lovers. It's a sign of this larger problem.
Exactly. And what makes this report even more impactful is that it was a collaboration between some major organizations, Cornell University Ducks, Unlimited, American Bird Conservancy, National Audubon Society, and the American Ornithological Society all came together to kind of sound the alarm.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful statement about how urgent this situation is.
It really is.
Okay, so let's wade into some different waters now, the sometimes murky waters of political fact-checking.
Oh, boy.
So we've got this report analyzing claims that were made by former President Trump in his recent address to Congress.
Okay.
And it's important to remember, we're just presenting both sides of the arguments here. We're not taking any political stance.
Right, just laying out the facts.
Exactly, letting you draw your own conclusions based on the evidence. So one of his claims was about achieving the lowest border crossings ever recorded.
Okay, and what did the fact check say about that?
Well, they found that while February 2025 did have the lowest arrest total in decades, U.S. government data actually show that the Border Patrol routinely averaged even lower numbers back in the 1960s.
Interesting. So while the February numbers are low, they're not unheard of historically.
Right, exactly. He also claimed that over 21 million people, many of them criminals, crossed into the U.S. illegally over the past 4 years.
Okay, and what about that one?
So that number seems to be highly inflated. U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported over 10.8 million arrests for illegal crossings from Mexico between January 2021 and December 2024.
Okay, but arrests aren't individuals, right?
Right, exactly. Many people crossed multiple times, especially during the pandemic when those asylum restrictions led to people trying again and again because there weren't any legal consequences for being turned back to Mexico.
I see.
So the actual number of individuals is definitely lower than 21 million, and there's also no evidence that other countries are intentionally sending criminals across the border.
Okay, so that claim needs some context.
Yeah. Another claim was about $59 million in government waste supposedly spent on hotel rooms for illegal immigrants in New York City.
Okay, what's the real story there?
Well, first of all, the actual figure was $58.6 million, and it was a federal reimbursement to New York City under the Shelter and Services Program,
Right.
which helps local governments and NGOs provide aid to non-citizens who are released by immigration authorities.
So it wasn't just about hotel rooms.
No, only $19 million of that went to hotel costs. And in total, over $80.5 million was reimbursed for services provided between November 2023 and October 2024.
Gotcha. Okay, what else did he talk about?
Let's see. He also talked about tariffs. He said tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly.
And what does the research say about that?
Well, that's a very specific economic perspective that's not universally agreed upon. Many economists argue that while tariffs may help some domestic industries, they can ultimately harm the economy overall.
Yeah.
Well, they essentially act as tax increases that drive up the cost of goods, which can potentially cause inflation and slower economic growth.
So any short-term gains could be offset by broader negative consequences.
Exactly. And there's research to back that up. A study by the Yale University Budget Lab looked at the tariffs that Trump imposed on Canada, Mexico, and China, and found that they could increase inflation by a full percentage point, decrease economic growth by 0.5 percentage point, and cost the average household about $1,600 in disposable income.
Ouch. That's not good.
No, it's not. Then there were his statements about Social Security. He said that millions of people over 100 are receiving payments.
And is that true?
Not quite. Social Security's acting commissioner, Lee Dudek, actually debunked that. He said the data being referred to are for individuals in Social Security records who don't have a recorded date of death, not necessarily people who are still getting benefits.
Okay, I see. So it's a data issue.
Exactly. And part of the problem is that the Social Security Administration still relies on this old programming language called COBOL.
Oh, wow. COBOL. I haven't heard that name in a while.
Right. Well, COBOL doesn't use a specific format for dates, so some entries default to a reference point over 150 years ago because of missing or incomplete birth date information.
So the data is messed up because of this outdated technology.
Pretty much. And reports from the Social Security Administration's Inspector General in 2023 and 2024 show that they didn't have a new system to properly record death information in their database.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so as a result, about 18.9 million Social Security numbers for people born in 1920 or earlier weren't marked as deceased.
That doesn't necessarily mean those people were actually receiving benefits, right?
Right. It just means the data is unreliable, and they decided not to update the database because it would have cost an estimated $9 million.
And as of September 2015, the agency automatically stops payments to people over 115 years old.
Right. So there's a lot of confusion around this data.
Yeah, definitely. Trump also talked about electric vehicles. He claimed that his administration ended the last administration's insane electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto workers and companies from economic destruction.
And what's the truth about that?
Well, there was never a federal mandate forcing people to buy electric vehicles. The Biden administration did have this non-binding goal for electric vehicles to make up half of new car sales by 2030, which Trump revoked with an executive order on his first day back in office.
So it wasn't really a mandate?
No, it was more of a goal or an incentive.
Right. Biden's policies were more about tightening pollution restrictions on gas-powered cars to encourage EV adoption and incentivize car companies to shift their production.
So it was a market-driven approach, not a strict mandate.
Exactly. And finally, let's look at his statement about Army recruitment. He said, "I'm pleased to report that in January, the U.S. Army had its single best recruiting month in 15 years.
Okay, and what's the reality there?
Well, while it's true that January saw this big jump in recruitment, Army data actually show a steady rise in numbers throughout the past year, with the highest total happening in August 2024 before the November election.
So it wasn't just a sudden spike in January.
No, it was part of a larger trend.
I see. And what do you think contributed to this increase?
Well, a key factor seems to be this future soldier prep course that the Army implemented at Fort Jackson, South Carolina back in August 2022.
What's that?
It's this program that offers academic and fitness instruction to help lower-performing recruits meet military standards.
Oh, cool. So it gives them a chance to catch up.
Yeah, and enables them to then move on to basic training. So it suggests that these kinds of targeted support programs can really make a difference in boosting recruitment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground already.
I know, right? Gaming saunas, pancakes, ducks, political fact-checking. It's quite a mix.
It is, and there's even more to come up next. We'll be exploring the impact of social media on female athletes, the challenges of combating smartphone addiction, and some intriguing connections involving Elon Musk and his favorite cryptocurrency, DOGE.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Can't wait.
Stay tuned.
Okay, so let's dive into the world of social media now, and specifically its impact on female athletes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right?
It really is. Yeah, we've got these two rising stars in women's college basketball.
Right.
Audi Crooks from Iowa State and Hannah Stolke from Iowa.
Right.
And their experiences, I think, offer some really valuable insights.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how social media presents both these incredible opportunities, but also these really harsh realities for these young women who are in the spotlight.
For sure.
On the one hand, you've got the positive side, like both Crooks and Stolke talk about connecting with fans and being role models, especially for young girls.
Right. That mentorship aspect is so powerful.
Yeah.
They're really using their platform to inspire, like, the next generation of athletes. Crooks mentioned that young girls often message her for advice, or they, want to take pictures with her after games.
Yeah, it's great to see them embracing that role model status. But then there's the flip side to this. Like, they've both experienced online abuse, criticism about their appearance, their behavior, and even sexist comments that male athletes just rarely encounter.
It's true, and it's really disheartening how prevalent that negativity is.
Yeah.
There was this NCAA study that found that female college athletes face 3 times more online abuse than their male counterparts.
Oh, 3 times.
Yeah, and it's often sexist or just plain abusive.
And Crooks actually said for women in sports specifically, there's just not many things that you can do without being criticized. It's like they're held to this completely different standard constantly under a microscope.
It speaks to this larger issue of gender bias and all the hurdles that women still face, especially in fields that have traditionally been dominated by men like sports.
Yeah, you're right. It shows we still have such a long way to go when it comes to true equality.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I did appreciate Stulk's advice for dealing with this kind of online negativity.
Yeah, what did she say?
Well, she encouraged people to, put the phone down, spend time with loved ones, and remember that you're not alone if you're struggling with this.
That's such good advice.
It is, disconnecting from the online world and reconnecting with your support system can do wonders for your mental well-being, especially when you're facing that kind of abuse.
For sure. And, speaking of disconnecting, that actually connects really well with our next topic about combating smartphone addiction.
Oh, yeah.
With all the addictive features that are built into these devices, it's no wonder so many of us struggle to put them down.
I know, right? It's like they're designed to keep us hooked.
Totally. But there are some practical tips that we can all use to reduce our screen time, right? Like deleting those apps that we just mindlessly scroll through,
Right.
setting limits, using those built-in controls like Apple Screen Time or Android's digital well-being, minimizing distractions by using things like focus mode or even switching to a grayscale display.
Yeah, those are all good starting points.
Right. And then for those who want a little more structured help, there are tons of third-party apps specifically designed for curbing smartphone use.
Really? Like what?
Oh, there are so many Jomo Opal forest roots, Lockmount OneSec.
I've never even heard of most of those.
I know, right? They all use different approaches, like some use gamification, some use straight-up blocking, but they all aim to help break that phone dependence.
So it's like fighting fire with fire, using technology to combat technology.
Exactly. And then for the truly hardcore, there's always the option of downgrading to a basic phone.
Oh, well, like a flip phone.
Yeah, remember those? Well, brands like Nokia and Punkt are actually making a comeback with these simplified devices that really focus on calling and texting.
Interesting.
Without all the distracting bells and whistles.
That's a bold move.
It is, but it could be just the thing that some people need to reclaim their time and attention.
That's true. And, going back to online abuse for a second, reducing screen time might also help limit your exposure to that negativity and open up space for more positive experiences.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's lighten things up a bit now with something a little more mysterious, what we're calling the DOGE factor.
Okay, this is where things get a little peculiar.
I like peculiar. Tell me more.
Okay, so we noticed Elon Musk and his love for the cryptocurrency DOGE popping up in some seemingly unrelated news stories.
All right, you've got my attention. What did you find?
Well, first we see him at a White House event wearing a DOGE t-shirt.
Okay.
And then in a completely separate story about concerns with Social Security payment data, the acting commissioner actually mentions DOGE while discussing the issue.
Wow, that's a strange coincidence. Anything else?
And then there's the incident of that massive cyber attack on X, formerly known as Twitter, right?
Right.
And Musk is investigating the attack's origins while also having access to U.S. government data systems.
Okay.
And get this, he's often seen wearing a shirt that says tech support during all of this.
Wait, hold on. He's investigating a cyber attack on his own company while having access to sensitive government data, and he's wearing a tech support shirt.
You got it.
That is bizarre.
It is. It's an odd mix of events that raises more questions than answers.
For sure.
Now, we're not saying there's some grand conspiracy here, but the coincidences are definitely intriguing.
Yeah, it's all very strange. Do you think he's deliberately trying to draw attention to DOGE through these seemingly random appearances?
It's possible. I mean, he's known for his unconventional ways, and he definitely has the power to move markets with a single tweet.
Right.
So maybe he's using his platform to subtly promote DOGE as a legitimate cryptocurrency.
Or maybe he's just a DOGE fan who likes to, wear his heart on his sleeve, quite literally.
That's possible, too.
Yeah.
I guess we'll leave this as an open question for our listeners to ponder.
Yeah. What do you think? Is there a deeper meaning to these connections, or is it just a string of random coincidences?
The DOGE factor is out there.
I love it. All right, let's end on a more uplifting note now with an amazing story of survival.
Yes, this is the story of Brianna Cassell, an Indiana woman who survived being trapped in her crashed car for 6 days.
6 days? That's incredible. How did she manage to stay alive that long?
The most amazing part is that she stayed hydrated by dipping her sweatshirt into a nearby creek and sucking the water out of it.
Wow, talk about resourcefulness.
I know, right? Incredible. And she had broken legs and a broken wrist. But thankfully, she was found conscious and able to talk.
That's so good to hear.
She was airlifted to a hospital in Chicago, and she's in stable condition. Doctors say she has a good outlook for recovery, although it will be a long road.
That is amazing, a real testament to the human spirit's resilience.
Really is.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the changing world of gaming and the search for connection in these community saunas to the traditions of Shrove Tuesday and the worrying decline of duck populations.
Yeah, and we've examined political fact-checking, the complexities of social media, and even the enigmatic DOGE factor.
It's been quite a journey, but before we wrap up, we want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question.
I've talked about the rapid evolution of technology, our increasing dependence on social media, and, these ongoing challenges of conservation and social responsibility.
Right. It makes you wonder, what steps can we take to shape a future where both individual well-being and global progress can thrive?
That is a huge question.
It is.
But it's one we all need to be asking ourselves.
Yeah.
We've seen how technology can be this blessing and this curse at the same time.
Right.
It connects us, it entertains us, it gives us these incredible tools for learning and growth, but it can also distract us, isolate us, and expose us to so much negativity.
Yeah, it's a real balancing act.
It is.
It's like we have to learn to harness the power of technology for good while also setting boundaries to protect ourselves,
Absolutely.
We need to be mindful of our screen time, develop those healthy digital habits, and make sure we're still nurturing those real-world connections.
Those authentic connections, yeah. And when it comes to conservation and social responsibility, we can't just sit back and hope that someone else will fix things.
Right.
We all have a role to play in protecting our planet and creating a more just and equitable world.
Yeah, whether that's supporting sustainable practices, speaking up for environmental policies, or even just making more conscious choices in our everyday lives.
Exactly. Those small actions can really add up.
They do. It's about taking responsibility for our impact on the world and working together to build a better future.
For ourselves and for future generations.
Right. So what does all this mean for you, our listeners?
Good question.
We hope this deep dive has given you some new things to think about, maybe challenged some assumptions, and left you feeling informed and empowered.
Remember, knowledge is most valuable when we understand it and use it,
Right.
So take what you've learned today, share it with others, and let's keep these conversations going even beyond the podcast.
Couldn't agree more. Well, thanks for joining us on this whirlwind of information.
It's been fun.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into this crazy, fascinating world around us.